Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. New Jersey's gubernatorial race is being watched closely across the nation. There are only two states in the country electing a governor this year. That's us and Virginia. Primary election winners Micah Rasmussen, a Democratic congresswoman, and Republican Jack Ciattarelli, the 2021 Republican nominee, are now launching into their general election campaigns. Standing by is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. We're going to be talking with him about the issues that could dominate the campaign and how those issues may change by Election Day. First, though, we are going to talk about leadership and communication, how the candidates are connecting with voters. Joining me now is the Emmy Award-winning anchor of State of Affairs on PBS and author of the book, Lessons in Leadership 2.0, The Tough Stuff, and a colleague I've known for many years, Steve Adubato. Welcome. It's so good to see you.
Laura, it is great to see you. You're still doing important work, great work, and I'm honored just to be with you. Thank you.
Well, the feeling is mutual. So let's start here. Coming right out of the gate, who's coming out stronger, Micah Rasmussen or Jack Ciattarelli?
Jack Ciattarelli has done this, Laura, as you well know, covering politics for a few years. He comes with a lot of experience, 3 times. It's his 3rd time. He wants it to be a charm. He seems to me to be strong, confident, clear of his message. The problem he clearly has when he comes out of the box is, I'm with Donald Trump right down the line. Well, that helped you in the primary. The question is, how's it going to play with the rest of the voters, Democrats and independents? Micah Rasmussen knows Congress. She knows federal issues. I believe she's still getting her sea legs, if you will, when it comes to running in a general election. I was surprised, frankly, Laura, that she did as well as she did in the primary. I didn't think she'd win by that much. It is going to be a quick learning curve for her, connecting, communicating, and frankly, feeling more confident without a lot of scripted material, because in all candor, Ciattarelli is solid with no script. Micah Rasmussen is improving in that regard.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Are either one of them really landing a clear, compelling message when it comes to what matters with the voters right now? And that's affordability, property taxes, and the everyday cost of living.
You know, you're going to talk to Micah about that, and he knows polling better than most in the next segment. But I have to tell you, more than anything, I don't think people know who Micah Rasmussen is. They know the name because she's had a lot of commercials out in the Democratic primary, but they don't really know her. She is going to go with her military record. She is going to go with the fact that she, frankly, is a strong member of Congress and someone who's a moderate. But they don't really know her. When she talks about affordability, she's going to have to get more, frankly, more specific when it comes to tax policy, when it comes to tariff issues, and what New Jersey can and cannot do when it comes to President Trump's tariff. Jack Ciattarelli, I think, frankly, he's got a problem. He's got a problem with Trump because Donald Trump does and says, and listen, we're doing this in a week where the world is turning upside down in terms of the Middle East. When Jack Ciattarelli ties himself so closely to Donald Trump, he's going to have to find ways to distance himself at key points, because most voters, or many voters, are going to have a problem with the president who is controversial, who does and says what he wants to do, and that doesn't always play well in a state like New Jersey.
And because things are so volatile and we do not know how things are going to play out, what's happening in the Middle East, we don't know how that is going to play come November. I mean, a week can be a lifetime in politics, right?
It's like a year.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so interesting. You know, again, it's tricky talking about this a few days before your program because the ceasefire in the Middle East, we don't really know what it's going to be. But I have to tell you, Donald Trump's polling numbers, I'm no fan of Donald Trump when it comes to leadership, I'll tell you that, but I'll say this. Donald Trump's poll numbers could go through the roof if positive, peaceful things happen in the Middle East, and frankly, that is unprecedented. But it could also go sideways. That means that politics in New Jersey, nationally, and frankly, Laura, internationally, can impact this race for governor, which is, as you said, one of only 2 races for governor in the nation after the presidential. Virginia and New Jersey, all eyes in the nation and maybe in the world are on New Jersey.
Yeah, and then again, let's go back to, you know, it also isn't what they're saying, it's how they say it. Jack Ciattarelli, as you mentioned, he is a pro. He knows how to get out there. This is his 3rd time. Micah Rasmussen, when we did the debates and we were timing, who said how much time they took? Micah Rasmussen spoke the least amount. And I don't know, I can't say that if that was by design or not. A lot of people, pundits, analysts would say that was by design because she was the perceived front runner, so you want to do no harm. But from a communications standpoint, what are some of the things that she has to get through to actually make a connection with the voters?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to congratulate you and the team, and I know you collaborated with Ryder and Globe and folks who did that debate. You did a great job with the debate, and it really gave us a chance to see the candidates unscripted, without their notes, without their cue cards, without the teleprompter. And here's the deal. I've known Jack Ciattarelli for a long time. As I said when we kicked this off, this guy's confident. He carries himself a certain way. He is a Jersey guy. And frankly, Laura, you know this as a Jersey girl. I'm a Jersey guy. He's going to play that to the hilt, and he's going to try to make the argument that Mikey Sherrill is not really New Jersey. Yep. I don't know how that's going to play or not, but I'll say this. He's convinced of his rightness. Jack Ciattarelli is convinced that he's got the plan. He's convinced and he's confident in any setting. I saw him at the Business and Industry Association event. Mikey Sherrill is scripted right now. Over time, if she's going to really connect in the way she needs to with so many people not knowing her, she's going to have to move away from those scripts, move away from the bullet points, connect with people, handle hard, challenging questions that she may or may not expect, because frankly, that is the way leaders have to communicate. Whether you're a corporate executive, a president of a university, in the media, you have to be able to answer hard questions. And Mikey Sherrill is making progress in that regard, but she's going to have to move very quickly to pick up with Ciattarelli. But let's remember, there are 800,000 more Democrats in New Jersey than Republicans. Trump came relatively close, 6 points in the presidential. In the last gubernatorial, Ciattarelli 3 points. It's blue, but it ain't that blue. It's getting more and more purple every day. But Democrats do have some edge. She has to tap into those folks, motivate them, and frankly, bring energy to her campaign. I'm confident she could do that, but she has to pick it up.
Well, and also when you look at trends, they talk about the third term as governor in New Jersey, right? They're capped. They can only run for 2 terms. And you have to look back to the 60s to see when there was a Democrat who won for 3 terms in a row, right? So Mikey Sherrill has got kind of history going against her. So when you look at that, and again, this is something that you've written about extensively, leadership and high stakes moments. Both of the candidates, they've been under fire. Sherrill has been questioned at the national level on some television shows about past campaign donations. You see her kind of maybe, I don't want to say fumbling, but maybe not as smooth as she could be. Ciattarelli's being asked about his alignment with Trump, which can be a little problematic. So, do you see them showing the type of resilience or transparency that you believe would define leadership?
It's a great question, Laura. Let me tell you what I think. Jack Ciattarelli has to find a way to be loyal to President Trump, but also, you said Jack Ciattarelli not too long ago when Donald Trump was running for president that he wasn't fit to be president. Right. You said it. Right. Now, did you not know enough about him at the time? He was in his close to 70 years of age when you said that, when he was running. Right. I got to ask, when you were asked, Jack, do you think there's any area where you disagree or you think the president's made a mistake? You had nothing, really nothing. You can be loyal, Jack Ciattarelli, to President Trump, but still disagree with him in certain areas when you disagree with him. Yes. I think you should do that. That's leadership to me. I'm sorry for interrupting, Laura, but no. In terms of Mikey Sherrill, she's going to have to distinguish herself from Phil Murphy. Yes, he's a Democrat. He's the sitting Democratic governor. But what policies does she disagree with? Where would she take the state in a different direction than Murphy did? If she can't and or doesn't do that, she's going to be tied to Murphy. Ciattarelli's going to be tied to Trump, and that's not what this election should be about. It should be about the 2 candidates. Right.
And voters aren't dumb. They can understand, okay, yeah, you know what? I said I didn't like this guy, but here's where we are right now, and here's where I do agree, and here's why I don't. But you don't always see that from candidates. Why? I think voters would appreciate the honesty.
Laura, look, in both my books, Lessons in Leadership, you can see I'm uncomfortable promoting my books. You see them behind me. In both books, Lessons in Leadership and the follow-up 2.0, the tough stuff, one of the themes is this: when you make a mistake, you own it. You screwed up. Everybody knows it. You think people don't know that you made a mistake? You think people don't know that Chitterelli said that Trump wasn't fit to be president? You said it. If you were wrong, say why you said it, say what changed your mind, and be clear about it. Mikey Sherrill, if you took a donation from Elon Musk, which she did, say it was a mistake or it wasn't a mistake. You give the money back, you don't give the money back. Where are you with Murphy? You agree, you disagree? How did he handle the nursing homes during COVID? Across the board, really, you agree with it? Why can't you just say what you think? Yeah. The person who you're talking about knows that he or she is not perfect. You're not perfect. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. I don't get the fear of just saying, I blew it, I screwed up, but here's what I learned. I don't see how that's weakness. I see that as confidence, frankly, Laura.
And then with the media, you kind of said, I've answered it. Move on, and that to me it's a pretty simple way to make the press or make people stop asking the question. I told you I messed up. We're going to move on. The other question I wanted to ask you about, moving past the governor's race, we have the assembly, all this seats in the assembly are up. You were elected to the assembly. Were you one of the youngest, if not the youngest, when you were just 26 years old? So you've experienced firsthand how what can happen at the top of the ticket can reshape the political map. Going back to Tom Kaine, he had a landslide in 1985. So with all 80 assembly seats up on the line, how much pressure is there on Mikey Sherrill and Jack Chitterelli to help not just themselves, but their party and down ballot?
Well, first, Laura, I thought we were friends and colleagues. For you to bring up my service in the I was the youngest person. I was 25 when I was running.
25.
You reminded me in 1985, Tom Kaine wins by a landslide. We're friends. You reminded me that I lost my seat in the legislature and became the youngest person in the history of the great state of New Jersey to lose his seat in the state legislature because Tom Kaine, listen, no excuse, I lost the race. Tom Kaine won my district with 70% of the vote. 70%. My grandmother she voted for Tom Kaine, and she was a Democrat, God rest her soul. But the point I'm making is that the gubernatorial candidate impacts down ballot races. It just does. I don't think either one of these candidates is going to get 70% of the vote, but if one of these candidates gets 57, 60% of the vote, they're going to bring in a lot of members of their party into the lower house of the state legislature. It's just the way it is. And some of those candidates are going to tie themselves in the assembly to these candidates, but if they go down in the polls up at the top, they're going to start distancing themselves because in politics, Laura, you know this better than anyone else. People are worried about their own skin, their own behind, more than anyone else's, and that's what they'll do. They'll run away from these candidates if they see them going down in the polls. Yep.
So a brief amount of time left. Let's end it here. If you give one piece of advice to each candidate heading into November, what would it be?
Jack Chitterelli, keep being yourself. I know you're a Jersey guy, but just be candid enough to say where the president, your friend, big supporter of yours in the primary, where he makes mistakes, because he does, just like all of us, except Donald Trump's mistakes are more impactful because he's a leader of the free world. Mikey Sherrill, throw away the script. The bullet points, the briefing papers, you know the issues, you understand what's going on in New Jersey, you have kids in the school system, you understand education, you understand public policy. You don't need all those scripted notes. Frankly, people need to see you, and I believe the more they see of Mikey Sherrill, the more they're going to like her.
Yeah. Steve Adubato, thank you so much for coming on the show. We always appreciate your time. So good to see you.
Great to see you.
And hope we're still friends now.
We're better friends than ever. Looking forward to working with you in the future. All the best.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for staying with New Jersey Politics. I'm Laura Jones, and we're going to dive into the key issues driving this race for New Jersey governor and how they might evolve as Election Day approaches. Joining us now is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, to break it all down. Micah, it's always good seeing you. Thanks for being with us.
You too, Laura. Thank you.
All right, well, so let's start with what's cutting through out of all the noise. And there's a lot of noise right now, especially at the national level. What issues do you see rising to the top in this race that's sticking with voters?
If you looked at any race for governor going back to the 1960s, you would have a hard time telling the difference between a race from back then and a race now. And the reason for that is because we are always talking about the high cost of living in New Jersey. It is something that is a perennial issue, is a perennial concern. It's quite understandable. We do have one of the highest cost of living states in the country. We also have some of the highest wages in the country and the highest incomes in the country. And when we're paying for local schools and local cops and government at the state level and the local level and the county level, you're talking about an enterprise that involves paying a lot of salaries, and salaries are expensive here. So we're always going to be a high cost state. And so the two candidates, the two nominees, Mikey Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli, on how we're going to grapple with that, on how we're going to pay for that, how we're going to rein that in. Ciattarelli has called for, and I know we'll be talking more about this, a lot of tax cuts. How do we pay for those? Mikey Sherrill has said, well, you know what, the reason why this is so much money is because the cost of health benefits is astronomical and going through the roof. So if we want to tackle this, we have to get at that cost. So it's really different approaches on how we come to terms with this very expensive government in New Jersey. Another thing that's really rising to the top, I think, this year and could really break out is as we look at how expensive New Jersey is, do we even have enough places for people to live? Is unaffordable housing part of the problem here? And is that really something that we have to get at? And so there are different approaches. Ciattarelli says the suburbs are being overwhelmed by affordable housing mandates and requirements from the Supreme Court, not something that necessarily is a willing state policy. We're sort of have to do this because it's a constitutional requirement. And Mikey Sherrill is saying, well, wait a minute, every town's got an obligation, but we can find ways to make that more palatable. We can find ways to make it easier to build everywhere, so it's not quite as expensive.
Now, right now in Trenton, this is budget season, and the governor and the legislature, they've kind of come together on a deal that would possibly raise taxes. So when we talk about affordability being a thing, taxes, cost of living, whether people can live here, let's talk a little bit about that plan and also how Mikey Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli are going to have to adjust their campaign strategy to go with it or possibly against it.
Yeah, we have to have a state budget in place before July 1st. That's the start of the new fiscal year. And so the legislature, the legislative leaders, the Democrats, the same party as Governor Murphy, they were about $150 million apart on their budget, and out of a $55 billion budget. Not a huge amount of money, but that was the sticking point that they were down to. They seem to have worked that out now. They've agreed on a plan that's going to aim to find major cost savings in the state's public health benefits, which we just talked about. And they are going to identify those savings. They're going to get to some of that money there. They're going to leave Speaker Coughlin's signature Stay New Jersey tax credit program in place for seniors. That was important to him. There is going to be an increase in the tax rate on sports and online gambling. It won't be a major one, but it won't be a minor one either. Devil's in the details, and we'll see there. And there's going to be a mansion tax that stays in place for home sales of over $1 million. So one of the things that's been eliminated, there were a number of taxes on fun items like bowling or laser tag. So that's going to come off. But they seem to have worked out their differences, and we'll see what happens in terms of affordability in New Jersey going forward on this budget.
Yeah, and I guess we'll then have to see if either candidate will latch on to that issue, whether for or against. I would imagine Jack Ciattarelli is going to be against any type of tax hike, and Mikey Sherrill might be saying, hey, these were some responsible things to do, but I guess we just don't know at this point.
No, we don't know. We haven't heard from either candidate on the budget. I don't know that it will become a major issue. Okay. Remember, the politicians and lawmakers are always looking to make the tax increases, the revenue increases, as invisible as they can, right? As below the radar screen as they possibly can. And so we'll see if they've succeeded in doing that, or if any of them become high profile enough to attract attention from the candidates this year.
When we've worked together on the debates, conversations with the candidates, we've talked about, and you've pointed out some issues that don't always get the top billing, like New Jersey transit, energy. What are we hearing about these now? Are they just topics that are good for debates, or are these issues that might move voters?
Well, I think New Jersey Transit in particular is one of those issues that speaks to the legacy of Governor Murphy and how Governor Murphy plays in this election. Of course, he's term limited. He can't seek another term. He's had 8 years in office. Typically in New Jersey, that means that it's the other party's turn. At least that's been the case for every race in the last 60 years. One party has 2 terms in office, the other party takes a turn. So the reason I mention that here is because New Jersey Transit is one of those issues where Governor Murphy has struggled mightily. He's done a lot. He has brought new dedicated funding from the corporate business tax to pay for New Jersey Transit for the first time. He has dealt with huge operational issues like the automatic stopping equipment that has had to go in. He settled the strike that was looming from the engineers. And so it's attracted an enormous amount of his focus over the last 8 years. But remember what he said, I'm going to fix it if it kills me.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody has considered the long delays as having fixed New Jersey Transit. And in fact, when Democrats before the primary were asked for to give report card grades, New Jersey Transit was one of the ones that the governor struggled the most on. Democrats recognized that they were going to have to distance themselves, put some daylight between themselves and the current administration. They're going to have to explain to voters how they're going to be different so that it's not another Murphy term, right? I think that's one of the things that Mikey Sherrill is going to have to really find ways to point out. This is not a Murphy third term. This is my term that I'm seeking. I am looking to take the state in a new direction, and I think transit is one of those issues. Conversely, Chitterelli is going to try to tie her to Murphy every chance that he can do that. Not only because he views that as something where maybe there's Murphy fatigue, but also to the extent that it reminds voters that it is the Republicans' turn. And so I think that's one of those issues where you'll see Chitterelli constantly trying to tie Mikey Sherrill back to Governor Murphy. Electricity is another one, the cost of energy in New Jersey. We are facing price spikes in monthly electricity bills. The governor and the legislature did manage to put together a plan to delay the impact of that past the election. So ratepayers are not going to feel the full impact of that right now, which Democrats are banking on. But Murphy, again, Chitterelli is going to try to make this a referendum on Murphy's wind policies and his renewable energy policies. The problem with that is, and I think that, again, Sherrill is going to have to point this out, is every state in our grid, Ohio is one that I look at especially, is facing those same rate hikes. And despite the fact that many of those states have had different wind policies and renewable policies than ours. So having a tighter wind policy, a little more restrictive wind policy, has not necessarily gotten any state anywhere. And I think she's going to have to point out, hey, these price spikes are not the fault of renewables. You can't look at states that haven't pursued renewables as aggressively as us and say that they are in any better shape than we are.
Yeah, transit, very New Jersey issue. You know, when you talk to energy, that is a broader topic affecting other states. And when you look at the Republicans, they're leaning into, and especially during the debates, crime and immigration, especially Jack Ciattarelli. But how much are issues like that shaping the race here? You know, it's a national issue. Is it really, is it as much of a local concern?
I think again, Jack Ciattarelli, who has been running for governor for 10 years. Yeah. He has had a chance to really sharpen these criticisms of current state policy. He's very much on the aggressive. He is pursuing an offensive policy on, he's on offense. I think crime is one of those issues. You're right, immigration is more of a national bent. How New Jersey police respond to immigration policy and are asked to assist in national policy, that will become an issue. right? Because, New Jersey has this immigrant trust directive that says that we're not here, our police are not here to enforce immigration policy. That's a national law enforcement issue. That is not a state issue. Republicans, Jack Ciattarelli, take the position, no, we are here to help. And so that will be a flashpoint. Another flashpoint will be bail reform. Jack Ciattarelli will say and has said that this is tying the hands of cops. We went to largely cashless bail over the course of the last decade in New Jersey, and he is saying that law enforcement says that this is a problem for us. Well, here's the problem with that as an issue. And again, Cheryl's going to have to really make the decision that she's going to push back on this. And again, does this make her a defender of current policy or not? That's the trick. That's how you do this, right? That's the battle that you've got to face, and not make her a defender of the status quo. But bail reform is very important to point out that this is not a partisan issue. Voters of both parties passed the constitutional amendment in 2014 that was on the ballot to change our Constitution to go to largely cashless bail. That ballot question was put on the ballot by both parties. In 2017, after that, both parties voted for the bill that implemented that amendment, and it was signed by Republican Governor Chris Christie. So I think there's a case to be made that bail reform may be a partisan flashpoint now, but up until now, it has been something that has been supported by both parties.
Micah Rasmussen, thank you so much for helping us make sense of all the moving parts, and there are a lot in this year's race. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. I'm Laura Jones. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.